Hey everyone, it's Helen from SMB Deal Hunter. Today we're going to talk with Ryan Rail about a deal he recently just closed just over a month ago in the SMB Deal Hunter Pro program. It was just under $500,000 in deal size, took about 10 months from beginning to end working with us. And today we're going to touch on what Ryan was doing before he bought his business, biggest challenges of the search, as well as how post-acquisition life has been, especially because Ryan also just had a baby,
Mhm.
so has been navigating both of those huge life challenges at the same time. So let's jump in. Ryan, first off, thank you so much for doing this. Let's talk first about what you were doing before jumping into business acquisitions.
Yeah, so great question. I previously my life has been really involved in the customer experience sales operations side of businesses, both inside and outside of organizations. I worked at the very corporate levels, working for businesses like Lowe's Home Improvement at their corporate offices, and then transitioned and worked inside a few small mid-sized businesses in like the home improvement spaces, and fell in love with all things understanding the customer. How do we understand goals and motivations to then impact product and transform businesses? And so that led to me creating my own consulting business. And so I was a customer experience strategist and fractional customer experience employee for businesses for the better part of the last 3 or 4 years before I kind of started this search. So that was kind of my world. I very much love sales, marketing, approaching growth from a philosophical standpoint of how do we understand our customers better to then be able to utilize those insights to transform product or process or people. And so that was great. And one of the things that I found though, in the consulting side of things is there's sometimes you come across owners that, you feel like you're giving them gold and they don't utilize it. And as much as like I don't want to say that I have all the answers, because of course there's times that I my advice may have not been the best thing, but I wanted more opportunities to be able to be like, if I feel so confidently that this is the move that the business should have made, I want to be able to have that power and ownership to be able to kind of make those calls, because there have been so many times that, decisions that were made in opposition of what I thought was right negatively impacted these businesses that I worked with. And so that's kind of what led to the inception of I want to have more of an ownership stake. Like, yes, I had it within my own consulting business, but like all these different businesses that I was kind of being an outside partner for, if I had had ownership stake and could make these final calls, like I know that there could be these tremendous results. And so that led to me actually start looking for opportunities to, acquire something and make that impact and have that level of ownership.
That makes a lot of sense. And how long had you been searching, I guess, before you joined us? What did that look
Yeah.
like?
So I wish I could remember the date that I first started. I want to say it was 2022,
Oh, wow.
beginning of 2022 when I had first started. Now, granted, started is loose, it's like that's when I first became aware of Biz Buy Sell or something, and I just started looking at deals. But I actually, right before joining SMB Deal Hunter, I had basically just fell through on an LOI. And one of the things that had just impacted me so much in that process is there was probably so many red flags that I could have learned sooner, but I had spent the better part of 6 months, a lot of money doing like, not necessarily a full QOV, but like bringing in people to help me review financials and doing all this stuff. And a deal fell through, and I just knew that there were so many things that came up in the conversation that I didn't feel comfortable with and pushed through anyway. And I didn't have a resource of people to even ask questions about. It was like me Googling things. And honestly, Helen, there were so many times I would find a video of you talking about something.
I
Where
love
I'd
that.
be like, try to take, the morsel that you gave in that video and see how I could relate it to the deal that I was working on. And then just realize like I need some help. I need to actually invest that. Like I don't want to have this situation again where I feel so emotionally invested in this deal that I was excited about. And then also just feel ill-equipped to actually see it through, or to have a team of resources to be able to feel confident about making moves. And so, yeah, that's what led to me uh, joining the group. Yeah, because you just can't do it on your own. And as much as I felt really strongly about the research I did and made really great progress, it's just I needed that extra team of resources.
That makes sense. I'm curious, what was kind of going through your head as you were making the decision to join, any sort of what were some of the biggest thoughts or things holding you back at the time?
Hmm. I, I I think if there was anything holding me back, it was it's tough because this is getting like maybe too psychological, But I think I generally feel that it might be an ego thing that uh, if I feel like there's ways for me to be able to kind of do things myself, I've generally like loved kind of taking the challenge, like I'm an avid reader, an avid researcher, and like so a lot of the things, both in my even my CX consulting business, like technologies that I didn't have experience with, if I just dove in and spent the time to learn it, like I felt capable to be able to do it. So I think it was more of just like an actual admission that like I can't do this all on my own, or there's no amount of like additional research and courses and things that are going to be more helpful than people who are doing this every day in their daily life. And I think I didn't know this until going in, but like even more so, there are people in the group that are experts in and actually work in lending and SBA and like feel super knowledgeable about that one specific aspect of deals. Or, the finance side with the people who do CPAs or people who have done so many of these deals. It's like no amount of videos or books or anything that I'm reading is going to kind of compare to that. And so I think any struggle is me kind of letting go and actually making that admission that like I'm gonna kill myself going through trying to figure this all out on my own. And so just like actually letting go and being like, no, utilize help. There's people out here that want to help, that are excited about doing this, and you can leverage community. I think that was more of the mental struggle that I had to get through.
Oh, that makes sense. I think I hear this from a lot of people, so you're definitely not alone there. I would say most people joining us, they've tried this on their own and they finally get to the point where they're like, you know what, I need help. Um, and I'm curious, let's kind of dive into your experience in the program.
Yeah.
Can you name some of the maybe like most frustrating or memorable challenges you went through during that search after you joined, and maybe some of the most valuable things you got out of the program that maybe helped you with those challenges?
Yeah, I think because I had the experience of kind of already going through and kind of finding deals, and I actually felt pretty comfortable of reviewing Sims and getting a good idea if this is something that was a good fit for me or not. Granted, the tools that exist in terms of like there's the quick deal analysis calculators and things like that were only made it faster for me. And so like I swear by a lot of the tools and resources and guides that exist, but I already felt pretty good about like how can I suss out a deal to feel like if this is within my deal box or if this is ultimately a good fit for me. Where things got a little bit more complex is always when you start to have the conversations with brokers or sellers and things start to get creative in terms of how you want to potentially structure your LOI or how you want to, reconcile with the way they're valuing the business versus what you're seeing already at the high level financials. And so, what I think the team was really great at is even in just office hours, being able to bounce an idea about of here's what I'm uncomfortable with about the deal. Am I going to ruffle feathers by potentially throwing something out there in this manner? If I say I want to come in at, X% seller financing, is that am I being foolish? Am I being, not recognizing something within their deal? And so the relational aspects of it, I think, are what's really been most helpful with the group is because so much of this is balancing relationships. Like at the end of the day, like you have to build a relationship with the seller and with the broker that you're working with, and they have to feel confident in who you are. And so those are the elements that I think you don't realize going into it. You think it might be more black and white in terms of numbers and, this is what my math says, so this is how the deal should go on paper. But so much of it is actually just more relationship based than anything else. And so having that team to be creative and work through those types of challenges was huge. And And actually, in my story, when we got to the point that I was actually ready to sign our PA, we were ready to go. It wasn't a relationship issue on my end. I had a great relationship with the broker and with the seller, but the seller and the broker, they broke up. They had some sort of fight, and right at the finish line, I was supposed to close in February. Um, the seller actually called me directly and said, "I fired our business broker, and I still want to sell the business to you, but I'm gonna have to take some time to figure out how we can do this, you know?" And so that was a huge wrinkle, which the team was huge in helping me with because I didn't know how to handle then at that point because I had already gone through the steps. We went through LOI, we went through due diligence, we went through all these phases to get ready, and now there was this huge curveball, and so the team was huge in that situation.
Oh, that's super helpful. Um, Anything else that we haven't spoken about in terms of, maybe some of the things that you felt were valuable that you got out of the program?
Um, it's small, but I think huge at the same time. I transparently had been a part of other like groups where I'd kind of like joined like a Facebook style group or another school like group to learn some information and stuff like that. And in so many ways, regardless of the volume of people who were in these various groups, you can feel like a number. You can feel like you're just someone who's here to pay for the subscription to be able to access the videos. And I kind of came in with the expectation that there would be some level of that, right? You've helped so many people and are continuing to help so many people, and there's so many people in our group that need the attention and the resources. And what I found to be the most surprising, but also the most helpful, is regardless of the size of my deal, regardless of what was going on, there was never a lack of someone checking in to be like, "Hey, you said this was supposed to close. How's it going? Is there anything you need help with?" Or when I mentioned there was one point that I was like working things out with my legal team here. I was like, "Hey guys, I think I got this. Me and the lawyer are kind of working through this." And then, someone on the team probably once a week at least is following up, be like, "Hey, how's that going?" And, we want to offer help. We want to be there supportive, and we're able to bounce ideas off. And so I think the fact that the group very much, and it wasn't an individual person, it was many people, right? It was many different people who felt invested in my deal, regardless of how many office hours I visited, regardless of the size of my deal, regardless of any my actual output or a number of questions. Like there was just a level of care that I felt was so important because they didn't have to, and maybe they did, right? Maybe that's but I mean like to me it's like it didn't feel like that was they were checking a box. It felt like there was actual genuine care for being a resource to help see my deal through the finish line, and I think that was huge and not an expectation that I had. So I was really grateful for it.
No, I'm really glad to hear that, Ryan. I guess let's pivot and now talk about the deal. Tell us
Yeah.
about your business, that the business you acquired. Tell us about what you liked about it, how you structured it. Give us the lowdown.
Yeah, so the business I acquired is Fundraising for the Future. They're a grant writing business located in Albuquerque, New Mexico. They service a national customer base, but that's kind of where things started. Grant writing is really interesting because so many of my previous clients were in the nonprofit spaces. And one of the biggest challenges you have as a nonprofit is how are you getting your funding? Maybe you have corporate sponsorship, maybe you have, a really great donor program, or you're constantly throwing events, a 10K or a car show or something to try and raise money for your nonprofit. But one of the things that is a huge part for many of these nonprofits is they have to get funding via grants, whether that's federal, state, or private funders. Like they need to do that, and many of them don't have the resources, the know-how, the knowledge of like where these kind of funds exist to be able to go and acquire those funds and those awards. And that's what my company ultimately helps them do, helps them get ready to then be able to speak about all the programs they have, do the prospecting to figure out, oh, there's this random funder in Connecticut that is only looking to work with husky animal shelters. This is perfect for your nonprofit. Let's go after them. We go do the prospecting, we help them with the writing, we help them win those awards so they have diversified funding efforts. Many of our clients as well you know, unfortunately, with the volatility of our existing political ecosystem, federal contracts are getting canceled all the time. And so, many of our clients are so grateful that they brought us on board because of the fact that they're not relying on federal funding anymore. Because, sure, that may have been one aspect of their business, but now they've diversified to get state awards or private awards or corporate sponsorships. And, we help them diversify their fundraising efforts so that way they're not reliant on their angel investor or on a single federal contract or whatever the case is. So, that's the work we do. What was appealing to me is I'm actually from Albuquerque, New Mexico. And while I don't live there anymore, I've lived in Los Angeles the past 8 years. Um, I knew many of the organizations that they've worked with when I kind of started exploring the business and understanding the impact that they've had on my home community. It was something that at least got me in the door to actually start looking at it a little bit deeper. And then when I reviewed the financials, everything looked great. Every client is on a consistent retainer basis, so
Wow.
the cash flow looks really positive. The actual setup in terms of how they pay many of the employees is like there's a lot of contract writers that come through. So it's like set as cogs for the deal. So like cash flow isn't weird in terms of if things are slow or if subscriptions dip. It's only if there's a client there, then it's built into the cost to be able to pay the contractors for the writing. And so from a cash standpoint, it was super appealing. And where I think things got even more of just like I think I came in ready to say no to most things because I personally hadn't worked in this space very much. Grant I had done consulting for nonprofits, but I had never gotten into the grant writing world. W- every step I kept wanting to say I was ready to find a reason to not move forward with the deal. But when I found out that there's, a COO in place that kind of handles all the day-to-day management, that was awesome, right? When the cash looked good, that was awesome. When I saw the way the actual contracts were structured, that was awesome. But the biggest thing for me, I was ready to kind of go through the SBA route, and we kind of started those conversations. And the seller offered. I didn't ask this, I asked about some level of a seller note, but the seller offered instead of doing a like 20% seller note and we do 70% of an SBA deal. She was like, if you wanted to do a 20% equity injection, I would cover the rest in the form of a note at better rate terms than what she talked about in terms of for the SBA rates that we were kind of talking through. And so at that point, it felt like a no-brainer, like I had some red flags that go up, to be like, okay, why are we going through this? And so I was really diligent throughout the Q of A phases and the due diligence phases to kind of work through all of that. But yeah, it seemed like at every point when I was trying to figure out if this is the right deal or not, there was something there that told me like, no, this feels like a no-brainer.
I mean, 80% seller financing is pretty incredible. So good for you for being able to secure that. And remind me, how did you find the deal? Is it broker deal? How did you come across it?
I use the aggregator, I believe. It's hard because, as you know, when you're going through this, you have like 15 open deals and conversations at a minimum at all times, So, but I believe this is one that came through on a day where I was just like, I would have my broker conversations or do things utilizing my deal spreadsheet, whatever. And then some days I would just be like, let me go check out the aggregator for a few minutes at a time. That was one on a whim that I had reached out to. I had had a previous conversation with this broker in the past about a different deal. And so I just called and said, hey, Jeannie, we talked about this other thing. I saw you just posted this other one. I'd love to learn more. And that was kind of that one. So it was one that I didn't even there was some I would get excited about, when
Yeah.
you come across one on BizBuy and you're like, oh my gosh, this is one I'm marking this to follow up, make sure I can get the information. And this one was not that. This one was just one that popped up the aggregator. The at least BizBuy financials looked decent. I said, let me see what this is about. I knew the broker before, so I knew I would be able to get a conversation. And yeah, but it was just the aggregator and on a whim reaching out.
That's great. That's fantastic. Well, look, let's jump forward a little bit. It's been just over a month since you closed. How does it feel? Finally getting through the gauntlet. You started your search early on in 2022, so we're almost 3 years later. Obviously, I think you were in the program for what did I say, 10 months. But how does it feel finally being on the other side?
It's a really great question. And I will, funnily enough, equate it to the birth of my first child. I know, which kind of feels kind of silly. But the feelings are almost nearly identical in that we had a rough labor with our baby. He's healthy and safe, and that's amazing. But there were so many things that were scary that went wrong that we weren't sure how we were going to get through. And that was so much with this deal experience as well. Like I mentioned, I almost feel like I was at the finish line, and then the seller and the broker break up, and then I have to engage with my lawyer to help draft a new PA agreement. And then we have back and forth where the seller and I aren't happy with the way things are going. And at the very end, you get the keys or the baby is born. And what I thought would be overwhelming elation and excitement, which was there, the actual feeling that was superseded all of it was like, oh, relief. We did it. Like, oh my, all of this stress, all this thinking, all of this like worry, it's over, it's done, and I just felt so much relief. So that first initial feeling, I'm texting the seller, and my wife is asking me, "Are you excited? You own a new business now, isn't that awesome?" I'm just like, "Yes," but I'm also just like, I'm so glad that portion is over. You know, it's a stretch, and I don't remember who said it in the group or in what video I've seen, but it's like so much of the deal. I'd say like 90 to 98% of your time, effort, and energy goes into like the last 2 months of your relationship closing that deal. Like everything before, like it's fun and exciting and it can be a lot of work. Nothing compares to actually just getting it to the finish line.
I 100% agree. And tell us, how's the first month gone? How's the business doing? How's the transition been going? Is it as good as the sim said it was, prior
Yeah.
to close?
Yeah, the business is going really well. Some of the complexities that exist with when you're trying to decide if you do an asset or stock agreement, for example, is when you have these client relationships on retainer, every single one has a contract associated with that. And at the same time, you have these nonprofits, which are sometimes, tied back to university or tied back to government funding. And so like those contract languages can get like pretty tricky. So this whole first month has been a lot of just trying to not necessarily renegotiate because we feel good about the terms of these deals, but like transfer, assign. Some of these contracts don't have a formal assignment clause, so it's like relitigating new agreements with these new clients or with these new contractors. And so it's been a lot of, just housekeeping of sorts to make sure that business can remain operational. We've been really excited in terms of meeting with the team and like figuring out like from them what are the things that they have strengths about to then be able to implement into our services moving forward. But so much of this first month, and what I would suggest for most people, is just to allocate your first 30, 45, 60 days to be like, I want to get to know my team. I want to know them really well. And there's transferring phone numbers, there's transferring contracts, there's, LinkedIn transfers, which like come across so many issues. The seller realizing, oh my gosh, I didn't realize how many times I put this email as my primary email. Can you send me a security code for this thing so I could change my email? It's like that is primarily what fills your 30 days, when you first start the business. So that's where we are. And from a financial standpoint, that's also one of the most exciting things is you set up your new bank account, you tell all your new customers your new routing information. And when you wake up and see that, a big retainer payment just came through, you're like, that's exciting. That's awesome. And so, yeah, it's been great. Everything aligned so far with what we've seen from the financials, and the team is great. And I'm excited about what the future looks like.
That's fantastic. And how is your what's your work life, I guess, or your lifestyle like right now? How's that changed? Because you were running your consulting business before, so you're already a business owner.
Yep.
But what's it like now? I know you mentioned the business has a COO kind of running a lot of the day to day, but what does your day to day look like now?
Yeah, right now, I'll talk about right now and what I actually like project it to be as well. It's a little bit tricky because, like I said, I did immediately have to take a little bit of time away,
And
to
you were able to, I'm
yeah,
guessing.
yes, and it's like I think if I was working a W-2 job, when you have your baby, I probably would have taken significantly more time to be just family dedicated. But when you run two businesses, like I had to have my hands stirring the pot, while I'm also holding the baby kind of a thing. But the initial day to day, I actually have some employees for my customer experience consulting firm. So they kept projects going, which was amazing. In terms of business development efforts and stuff like that, that's going to be still probably a small percentage of some of the work that I do with my original CX consulting firm. With this new business, they also have a COO that basically runs everything in terms of a lot of the client engagement and managing the grant writers. And so my main function is also just trying to think bigger picture in terms of marketing and growth strategy, some actual, outreach and things like that from a business development standpoint. So I'd say my actual day to day is probably going to be, like 70-30, spending majority of my time with fundraising for the future in terms of growth initiatives and transforming things there. And my CX consulting firm, it's been running and running well. And while there's some small efforts, I'll still continue to work on that standpoint. It's probably like that 70-30 split moving forward. But the key is having a great team, having people you can rely upon that I can ensure that, active projects for existing clients continue to work smoothly. And yeah, I think that's kind of how my day to day works right now is I have a really great tool that I love called Front, which is like allows you to consolidate all of these different channels into a singular inbox. So, all of my social channels for Fundraising Future and Tight Ship CX and everything is in one space. And so, as I'm going through, I've gotten really good at like I try to handle things in chronological order. I'm of the inbox zero mentality. And I'm like, cool, here's a fundraising for the future thing. Here's a tight ship thing. Here's a personal email that came through. And it's just like, I'm very good at switching back and forth and really handling all of it at the same time.
As well as being a new dad. So
Yes.
managing a lot, but sounds like you're navigating it like a champ. So good for you and congratulations again. Um, Final question. I want to be sensitive of time. Um, Going back to your experience with the program, what would you tell someone watching this right now, unsure about taking the leap or taking the next step to working with us? What do you have to say to them?
Yeah, I would say look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, do I want to do the work to actually obtain a business? There's no amount of courses or resources or network or people that are going to do it for you. And so if you're really interested in doing this, there are going to be an incredible amount of resources and a team that's going to be there to support you and actually push it through. But at the end of the day, like you have to want it and you have to be able to push it through. Um, because that's the only way you're going to be able to get it through. And so I would say that this program is not for you if you're not one of those people who's really hungry to actually make things happen. Because if you come in and expect they're going to handhold me, they're going to give me my first business and that's going to be it, that's not what this program is. And I don't want to lead about what that, that's not what the program is or should be. But what I want to say is that when you're hungry, you're going to be able to ask the questions that you need to move the deal forward, right? The team is there, but they need to know how to guide you. And so if you're not active, you're not attending the office hours, you're not actually looking at the deals that are being sent your way, you're not actually leveraging the insights that people are giving you, you're not going to get anything from it. So I would say look yourself in the mirror, ask how bad do you want it? Are you going to be willing to work through it? Because if so, they're going to make it so much easier for you. They're going to make it so much more helpful. You're going to have so many more tools and resources. But at the core, anyone who's thinking about it, ask yourself that question because if that is something that you're excited about, that is something you really want, then this is the place to go and it's going to make your life 10 times easier.
I really, really appreciate that. I completely agree. It's definitely not a sign on the dotted line. You're now a business owner by any
Yeah.
means, right? This we always tell people this process is grueling, and you have to hustle and be hungry and really want it. So that's great advice, Ryan. Thank you again. Just thank you so much again for your time today. And for those listening, if Ryan's story sounded like anything like what you've been going through, then the program may be a good fit for you. Feel free to click on the link on this page somewhere to learn more, and also link it, I'm sure, across our other socials. But Ryan, thank you so much for your time again today. Really excited for you for this next phase. Excited to continue following along, and also link to your new business as well here. So thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the time, Helen, and for the awesome community that you've put together. Like I said, it's really amazing resources, but at a fundamental level, just incredible people. And so you have an eye for that. And so I just want to say kudos and thanks for letting me be a part of this.
Thank you so much.